I'll get started. I was just going to talk about why I've decided to write the book, and I'll cover the first 2 chapters, and I'll do 2 chapters a night because there's 10 chapters. I wanted to write the book because on Quote for Energy side, I have been working with a business coach, and she talked to me about my story. So of course, it was only when I first got to know her, and of course I was telling her about myself and my background, and then of course I told her that I've been poorly, and she asked me to go into the story, so I did, and she said, you need to write a book. That story will help so many other people that are going through not only cancer but other difficult things. And I wasn't convinced at first. It took a few sessions of her to convince me. But when I sat down and thought about it, I thought, oh, all right then, why not? So I went away and I thought about 10 chapter headings. And then I did a paragraph for each chapter, and it just went from there and grew. And it was quite therapeutic, really, writing it down. And anyone who knows me well knows that I talk about it and I'm very matter of fact. But writing it down made me think about it that little bit more. And for anyone that's read the book will know that at times it was difficult, and it was difficult. Um, we tried so hard to get pregnant with Liv, and we decided, um, Luke was about 6 when we started trying, um, and in the end we'd almost given up because it just every month it wasn't happening and wasn't happening. That went on for ages, so we decided, oh, forget it. And then it just happened, and I guess that was because my body wasn't stressed anymore, thinking about, is it going to happen or isn't it going to happen? And we got pregnant with Liv. Luke was 10 by this time. So there's a massive gap with them. And, getting pregnant with her, that was just, it was amazing. My pregnancy started off okay. The usual sickly mouth feeling, but not actually being sick. I ate ginger biscuits till they were coming out my ears for the first 14 weeks, I think. When I went for my first scan, I asked them if there were 2 in there because my bump was just massive. I was convinced it was twins, but there was just one. Thank God. My second scan, that went okay. That was 20 weeks. Everything was fine. Baby was fine. Measurements were fine. I was fine. And then at 21 weeks, I got like a pain under my bump on the right hand side. Um, and I thought it was something to do with her, obviously, with being pregnant. Um, and with it being a Saturday, my doctor's was closed. So I rung the midwife at the hospital, and she said to go in and they'd check me out. So they did a couple of tests, and it came back that I had a water infection. So they gave me antibiotics and sent me home. But initially, she had said she thought it could be my appendix, but she wasn't quite sure. But because the water infection showed, she was happy that that's what it was. So I went home on the Saturday with antibiotics. By the Monday, I was in more pain. So I just rung and said, I'm on antibiotics for a water infection, but surely it should be getting better now. So she said, oh yeah. She said, bring a bag, you'll have to stay in overnight because we'll have to monitor you, with it being your second visit. So I went back on the Monday, and then I was in for 2 weeks. They took bloods every day. They were checking my urine every day. The water infection went with the antibiotics. They couldn't work out what the pain was because the pain was getting worse and worse. And there was nothing obvious. There was nothing coming back on my bloods. In fact, I thought at one point they must be selling it on the black market because they took so much of it every day. And then one day, I think I got on the nerves, to be fair, because they couldn't work out what it was. And I was on a maternity ward. People were coming in, having babies, going home, and here was me, only 20 odd weeks, just sat there, not knowing what was wrong with me. And then this one day, the pain was that bad. I think I probably had a bit of a panic attack, really. It was that bad. I got on the window ledge behind me on my bed, and I had my head stuck out the window because I was panicking with the pain that much. I couldn't breathe. So I had my head hung out the window trying to get some oxygen in. And this poor young girl come in and they put her in the bed opposite me. And, I must have looked the right state. Um, I calmed myself down and got back on the bed and apologised to her because I said, that's not what labour will look like, love. You'll be all right. I'm not even due to give birth. Um, and I explained like I was in, they didn't know what was wrong with me. Well, not long after that, they moved me into a side room because I think I must have been scaring these first time mothers coming in. Um, so I spent, I don't know, maybe another 5 days in that side room. And the pain was just gradually getting worse and getting worse. And they kept saying to me, you're constipated. So they gave me a pessary. I'm not constipated. It's not that. It's baby growing pains. No, I've had a baby before. It's not growing pains. Um, and all these different doctors were coming, and I was explaining what the pain was like, and they were almost fobbing me off, I guess, thinking I must have been overreacting. And then this one night, I was in the bath, and the original consultant I'd seen when I came in on the first Saturday, she came to see me because she knew I was still in, and she just asked if she could examine me once I got out of the bath, which obviously I let her do. And the left side of my bump was fine, and then when she touched the right side of my bump, it was red hot, and she could feel a big lump. So she said to me, "It is your appendix." So after all that time and all that pain, it was my appendix. So she said, "We'll arrange to get you booked in as soon as possible. Someone will come and see you tomorrow." Because this was like 9 o'clock at night or whatever. So they came the next day to talk through what the next steps would be. Um, and this is where it was a bit difficult because they don't see the baby as viable because, well, they're not born. So as far as they were concerned, she didn't exist. That it was just me. They were just looking after me. Um, so they said that we would have to sign a declaration to say that we understood that if labour started while the operation was on and they lost the baby because there wasn't anything they could do, that we understood that was a consequence of having the operation. Which of course is, we'd tried for her for so long, that wasn't an option for us. So because I was only a few days away from where she would be classed as, she'd still be tiny, don't get me wrong, but she'd be classed as viable. I asked them to just, I'd been on pain relief for days, by pethidine. So I just said, well, can you not just leave me on pethidine for a few more days until I get to the point where she's viable? But they wouldn't do that. They needed to operate, they said, as soon as possible in case my appendix burst. So what they did, they gave me some injections to enhance her lungs so that should she be born, those steroids would have helped her lungs develop a little bit more. And they did that over a period of 24 hours. And then I went in for my operation, obviously desperately nervous that labour might onset and I wouldn't even know what had happened until I woke up, and they'd already said they'd have to take her to St Mary's, so wouldn't even get to see her. So I was scared going down for that operation, but thankfully it went okay. It was straightforward as far as I knew. My scar was fine. I went home 3 days later, perfectly fine. Everything else was fine. A few painkillers, and then about a month later, I was still under the watch of the hospital midwife and not my own midwife. I've been every week and everything was fine. And then 4 weeks later, I went just so that they could sign me off and I could go back to seeing my midwife at my doctor's. And she said to me, have you spoken to the consultant? And I said, no. So she said, I'll just get him. So she brings this guy in, and I thought, well, maybe he needs to sign it off. So he just said to me, have you spoken to the consultant that did your operation since? And I said, no, why? Everything was fine. I was fine. I was home in 3 days and blah, blah, blah. And he just said to me, dead matter of fact, because when they did your operation, they found a tumour. And I was like, because I've gone on my own. I said to John, no point you coming, it's a waste of time, go to work. So I was just a bit like, okay. So I just said, right, okay, so what does that mean? So he said, well, I don't really know. You'll have to wait to hear from him. And I was like, and anyone that knows me knows that that's just not the way I am. So I said, fine. So I got out of there, got in my car. I rung my doctors and said, can you get me the secretary's number for the guy that did my surgery? So they did. And I rung her, this was on the Thursday afternoon. And she said, oh, there's a letter on his desk about you. So I'll speak to him in the morning and then I will ring you at 9 o'clock. So I was like, right, okay. So, fair play to her. I was on the 61 going to an appointment for work in Chorley, and she rung me and she said he wants to see you at 9 a.m. on Monday. And I thought, something not quite right here. So I said to her, that's great. I'll see you then. So, of course, I worried all weekend. John worried all weekend because it's the unknown is probably worse than knowing. We went to the appointment on the Monday morning, and the guy that had done my surgery was called Jonathan as well. So we had a bit of a laugh and a joke about that. And then he just said, I knew when I did your operation. He said, I knew what it was, but we haven't told you any sooner because we wanted it confirmed because they'd sent it off to be tested at Christie's. He said, you've got something called pseudomyxoma peritone. And I was like, I beg your pardon? And I couldn't get my head around it. And I was just like, so what's that then? So he just said to me, there's a 1 in a million chance of getting it. Great. I said to him, I'd rather have been the 1 in a million that won the lottery, but we're all dealt cards. So he just said, it's the only way to describe it in layman's terms is that it's like a pollen that spreads in your abdomen and it lands and spreads and smothers your organs. So slowly but surely it's killing your organs off because they can't function. And if it's left late enough, then there's nothing they can do. Now they knew that mine had already burst and spread, but what they didn't know was to what extent it had burst and spread. So he explained, a few other things. He said he'd worked at Christie's for 25 years and never come across it, and he was shocked when he opened me up, and that's what it was. So he just said I'd have to wait to meet the team at Christie's, which I would do while I was still pregnant, but obviously there was nothing that they could do for me whilst I was pregnant. And termination just wasn't an option, nothing that I would have even ever considered. So he said once I'd had Olivia, then they would have to do further tests and do scans to see to what extent it had spread. And that's fine. So off we trotted and talked about that and told a few people, but not everybody, because we didn't really know anything ourselves, I guess. He said that it was lucky that I was pregnant, because if I hadn't have been pregnant, it it moved my organs enough to make it rupture, which is what caused the pain, and obviously why so it wasn't actually my appendix that was the problem, it was the tumour that was attached to my appendix. But he said having Olivia had pretty much, she'd saved my life, which is bizarre. So then I waited, I don't know, maybe a month or so more before I got a letter off Christie's to go in and meet a consultant there. And that was a bit weird because I don't know if anybody's ever been to Christie's, but to say it's a cancer hospital, it's such a nice place to go. The staff are amazing, and even the patients wandering around it, everybody's happy to let on to other people and chat about different things. So we went to that appointment. It was a guy called Mr. Wilson, and I always think of Dennis, where he shouts, "Mr. Wilson!" So that's all I could think about really when I met Mr. Wilson. But he's such a nice guy. And then there was a nurse there called Bex, and she's for the past 10 years she's been amazing. But they talked us through the next steps, and again they said they couldn't do anything until I'd given birth, so to let them know as soon as possible once I'd had Liv. But said that they knew mine had already burst, which I knew, and there were a few options. The early stages, they normally just watch and wait and see if it spreads or what happens to it, and that wasn't an option for me. And then there was like a middle option, and then there was this massive surgery that they talked about, which is 12 hours, and they take all the things that your body doesn't really need to function, but you've got. And they weren't quite sure where I would sit in that. So they gave us leaflets and stuff, told us not to go on Dr. Google, but of course I did as soon as I got out of the hospital. That's the first thing that you do. And then we just carried on as normal, I guess, because there wasn't anything really that we could do, and the most important thing for me was keeping Liv safe, and getting to the end of that pregnancy. And as stubborn as she is, Luke was 3 weeks early, so I thought she was going to be early, and of course she wasn't. She was late. But after all that, I ended up with this bloody pubic dysfunction. It's like where your pubic bone dislodges because of the weight or whatever it was. I got that as well, and like I don't know if anybody's ever had it, but it makes you like drag your leg round because it hurts that much. And I was just like, seriously, can anything else go wrong? But here I am. I'm talking about it, trying to raise awareness about staying strong, I guess, in times where, like now, I guess, people are suffering now because of the pandemic, and all I want is to try and help people think about things in a different way and, stay positive. Nothing's quite as bad as it seems. And Vicky asked me a question. I think she's the only one who sent me a question. She asked me what it's like when they actually say you've got cancer. And I always say it is like the advert on the telly where they start sitting down and telling you things, and you just go all muffled and you don't really listen to what they're saying. And like where the guy falls on his knees and somebody's there to pick him up. Well, I want to be that person that picks somebody else up, because I want to help people come to terms with it or deal with it. But it's hard when you hear that question. But I don't think it's as bad now as what it used to be. So I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, you never really heard anybody talk about cancer, or if they talked about it, it was all hush hush, and it was almost as if they were like gonna die, you know. But it's not like that anymore. Now, when I had it 10 years ago, they said that 1 in 3 people would get it. Now it's only 1 in 2. So, it's highly likely that you or somebody that you know, or, a, a friend of a friend is gonna suffer with some form of cancer, which is a scary thought. But cancer research um, do such an amazing job in coming up with different treatments, or if they can't treat it, something where it can contain it, or and it's not always now you've got to have chemotherapy. And I had chemotherapy, but not chemo where my hair fell out, because that I would have been mortified. I don't know if anybody knows, but my hair I got COVID and my hair fell out. So this tuft here is where my hair's going back, and it's really hard to keep under control. But I'd have been mortified if they said that my hair would have fallen out. And then I think, but would I? Really? I think I'd have just cut it off and got a great wig. And I'd have probably got a few great wigs so that I could have different hairstyles for how I felt. There's always something. I always like to try and pick the positives out. Um, so yeah, that's me, and that's my first 2 chapters of the book. Um, I'd love to get feedback from anybody that has read it. Um, it's always nice when somebody gets in touch and says, I've read your book and I loved it. I've had a few people get in touch and say that they cried, and that obviously wasn't my intention, but I understand that some bits are a hard read because some bits were hard to write. But hopefully it's out there for the greater good, and to help other people going through similar things. And it might not be cancer, it could be a divorce or a death of a loved one, or anything, just to help people keep positive. So that's me. I haven't had any more questions, or I can't see any more questions. So thank you for watching if you've watched, and I will do chapters 3 and 4 tomorrow. Take care. Bye now.